There is a city there except for the two towers of the Greenwich Village Observatory, which he painted at that period. Notice the calm river going through the green landscape. This is still the notion of the pastoral, and once again, as we've seen with all romantic painters, the sky is a very important indicator of the emotion. Notice that this is a calm sky, essentially. It all looks as if the clouds are in some kind of order. Now you're going to start seeing a change. We see things that are becoming toward the sublime. And here we have the first picture that shows the difference. Notice, first of all, the water. The water in this picture has become dangerous. It has become turbulent. It fills the screen, the canvas with a sense of unease. The water is, there's a storm, perhaps. You can see, as we know from the Gothic novel, that the scene is set in darkness with the hidden moon. And this is a picture of fishermen going out at night to make their living. So this is darkness and night and danger. Already, nature is becoming more threatening. There is fear here, there is struggle. And in romantic paintings of the sublime, nature shows us itself often in very turbulent situations, very disturbed moments. Next picture, you're going to see a dramatic change. Many romantic landscape pictures show us disasters. They show us sea storms, shipwrecks, dark, moving skies. You can see from the composition that everything is beginning to fall into itself. Notice here the water is completely changed again. It's become sublimely frightening, even beautiful, but at the same time, underneath this romantic beauty, these great moving waves, the emotion here that we are supposed to feel is one of concern, fear, danger. Now, we are safe, as we are in the cinema house today, when we sit and watch movies. We can observe this with a calmness of mind, but the Romantics wanted to show us that the world of nature in the landscape could be very different. Here, the ocean is now seen as a great power. Notice on the right you have this sail, the ship is about to sink. In the middle you have people who are in rescue boats, they're trying to escape from it. But as you can see, the sea is going to overpower man. Man is very small in this picture compared to the dramatic movement of the water and the sky. You may have noticed that through all of these pictures, half the frame is filled with sky and clouds. Not only must you look at water, you have to look. Landscape also included weather. This was something the Romantics felt expressed emotion very well. Movements of clouds. Here the clouds are dark. They are ready to rain down perhaps snow or hail. You might even imagine that these are the clouds from a war in the distance, that these are people escaping from burning cities. All of this captured the romantic imagination of the period at this time. Let's move forward now. We go and see Mr. Turner in a later phase of his career. Here you will notice that many of the details have been abstracted. They've been turned into pure light, pure color, and pure movement. This is romantic in one way because it shows the sublime, the great power of nature. You'll notice that the sky itself is filled with a very bright light that looks like a fire or an explosion. But this picture has another meaning. This picture has a very political meaning because this is a slave ship that is caught in a storm. Slavery by this time was illegal, and the people who were in the slave ship if they were caught with African slaves within the ship to be sold in America. They would be fined. So this is a terrible picture because although you can't see it specifically, there are many dark blotches and many dark marks at the bottom part of the picture. This symbolizes the crew, the people who were in the ship, the slaves, because what they used to do when they were arrested, or to avoid being caught by the police who were on the sea, they would throw all the black people into the ocean and just get rid of them. So here, Turner is making a political statement about the horror of slavery. This was part of the Romantic movement as well, part of revolutionary thinking about human and civil rights. This all could not have happened before the French Revolution, this sense of social injustice that you read about in Dickens and other Romantic writers of this period. Here, the landscape painter interprets it through light, color, and the fact that you can't quite see the reality of it. It's all in a kind of confusion. Painter, Caspar David Friedrich, he is one that painted very theatrical and romantic, sublime pictures. His landscapes are very Gothic. You've heard about the Gothic novel, where the exploitation of darkness and mystery and fear was concentrated in stories where there were phantoms and all kinds of strange things. We have this today in the cinema. We have it in horror films. We have it in Frankenstein. We'll be reading about Frankenstein. You will also notice in Caspar David Friedrich that this is the beginning of images that were later used by a modern director named Tim Burton. He has taken some of these visual ideas and put them into his movies in a different way, but it's still a romantic way of looking at the world. Let's take a look at his first one. Here we have a combination of the pastoral and the sublime. In the foreground we see three people. One of them is staring out at the beauty of the sea. One of them seems to be looking for his eyeglasses, or he's perhaps examining something, but you'll notice he's on the edge of a cliff, so there's a certain danger. The third figure is a woman. We're not quite sure what she's doing. She may be pointing out something. But as you look further into the picture, framed by the trees, once again, this framing device of nature, nature has two qualities here. One is the calm sea, but before it, there's this very menacing and frightening series of rocks. This is a very subtle implication by the Romantic painter to show us that nature can be both beautiful, but also it can contain fear and possible menace. Let's move on to the next one. Here, perhaps more than any other, is Tim Burton. If you know the bride, I think there's one about the bride, the ghost bride. Or, what was it called? Yes, the corpse bride, the cadaver. You may have seen the film. Here, however, we look at something a little different. It's not made comic, or it's not made for children. This, at its period, was very much a portrait of the feeling of the time. It's Gothic, it takes place at night. You will notice that all the trees are dead. You will notice there is snow on the ground. You will notice that this is set on the left side of the painting. We see that there are crosses in a graveyard. The key thing, however, is the structure. This is a ruined Gothic cathedral. The Romantics in Gothic novels and in their sensibility wanted to often escape into the past. And the favorite past that they went to was not the Roman period, but the medieval. This is a medieval church that has been ruined perhaps by war or decay or age. But you'll also notice that there is a procession of people going into the church. They're going towards something that we're not quite sure what it is. It's a mystery, perhaps. It may be a sense of freedom that they're looking for. It may be a sense of communing with the dead spirits of nature. You'll notice they're all in black clothes and they are in couples. This implies that there's a ritual or some sort of special celebration. We're not quite sure what it is. These could be priests going into the ruined church, or they could be pilgrims. It's left up to our imagination, but the impact is highly romantic. This is a sublime picture of the landscape, but it is also, unlike the picture we saw earlier of the pastoral churches, this is a church that is now from the past but has been destroyed. This feeling of loss and melancholy and nostalgia are particularly romantic themes that we see in this kind of painting. And you also notice it in novels and in particular in many of the poems of William Wordsworth. There's a certain melancholy, a feeling of sadness. It's romanticized because, as you can see from the composition, it's very dramatic. This is, you can see how the church is framed. Once again, notice, we moved away from water now, but in all the pictures we've seen so far, you'll always notice that there's a framing device with trees. Nature here is no longer green and pretty with sun, it's now dead. There's a sense of gloom. There's a sense of, what shall we say, almost a sense of a nightmare. This was really very thrilling to the romantic imagination. So this man, Caspar David Friedrich, was in many ways a signature painter of the Northern Romantic school. We see one more picture of his. Here is a couple looking at the sunset. You will notice here how nature is dark, menacing. Look at the root of the tree. It looks as if the tree is a living creature. Perhaps it's a monster that's about to grab you. We've seen how this has been used later on in horror films, where trees actually grab children and eat them. You may have seen that in Snow White. But here, Caspar David Friedrich is showing us a deep sense of loss. The tree on the right is dead. It's upturned. It no longer is nourished by the earth. The people themselves are very still. They're contemplating the falling sun. So here is a sense of melancholy and loss. This is very particular to romantic landscapes. You'll also notice there is very little sky here. The framing device of the trees now becomes quite predominant in the picture. Nature here and romantic landscapes, the nature of this is very different than what we saw in the earlier pictures by Constable. It's no longer serene. There is a sense of disturbance here, of something that is not particularly right, or it may be simply a feeling of loss. Here is a picture that combines the sublime and you might even think the pastoral. It's actually a very beautiful moonlight picture. When you think of the word romantic, you often think of moonlight, the sea, the sky. Here we have a calmness. It's not quite pastoral.